All right, everybody, welcome back into cherry picking today's video. Top 5 bounce back candidates to draft in fantasy hockey for this season. Now we're going to be looking at guys who are on a new team, in a new situation, maybe a new coach has come in, and just some guys who are really in a funk last season. Maybe guys also looking for a contract, guys in contract years, also good guys to target for a bounce back season. If you haven't already seen, the hockey content is rolling off the shelves here at OwnersBox already. We've got top 10 breakout candidates out. We've got early Stanley Cup picks out. We've got top 50 fantasy hockey breakdown, and we've got target and fade goalies with NHL fantasy hockey expert and Adua. So be sure to check those videos out. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. Let's get into the video for today. All right, so the first bounce back candidate we're going to be looking at today, Connor Brown, who's now on the Edmonton Oilers. He's been a model of consistency throughout the course of his career, other than last season, obviously. Joined the Washington Capitals and got hurt pretty much immediately, only played 4 games. But when he starts his season with Edmonton, he'll be about 11 months, 12 months removed from his ACL injury, so he'll be ready to go. But you look at his first 3 seasons with the Toronto Maple Leafs, he didn't miss a single game, played 82 games every year. He was always around 30 to 35 points, double-digit goals in 2 of those seasons. And then when he was with Ottawa, you saw a similar thing. Really didn't miss a lot of time, double-digit goals in pretty much all of those seasons with the Senators as well. He's also in somewhat of a prove-it year, I would say, this season. You know, he's playing on the league minimum, $775, but also has a ton of bonuses tied into his contract. So he's obviously going to be looking to make some money, but looking for obviously a longer contract after this, an extension of some sort. Now, this team with the Oilers most likely be slotted on that first line with McDavid and Zach Hyman. He played with McDavid in Erie for 2 seasons in the OHL, played with Zach Hyman when he was on the Toronto Maple Leafs too. So he'll be getting some power play 2 time. I think we'll probably see. Obviously, won't really be slotted on that first power play right now, but he's also going to be on that penalty kill as well. One guy that's going to be extremely valuable in bangers leagues too. We saw Zach Hyman come into this Oilers team in almost a similar scenario, maybe not off an injury, but where he was playing in Toronto beforehand. And he absolutely exploded for his 2 best seasons. Last year, finished with 83 points. Now, is Connor Brown going to have 83 points this season? Probably not, but I think a 40 to 50 point season this year on an Edmonton Oilers team that all they do is score goals is very realistic. A guy that you can steal late in fantasy hockey drafts. All right, the next bounce back candidate we're going to be looking at, someone that's probably on a lot of people's list this year, is Jonathan Huberdeau. Last season, to put it was an absolute fucking disaster for this guy. On this Flames team, it really was a 60-point dip from his season prior with the Florida Panthers, suffering his lowest point per game season since he entered the NHL. This point drop off as well is the biggest one-season decline since the cap era. So obviously just a deplorable season all around for Jonathan Huberdeau. Expectations were really high with Johnny Gaudreau and Tkachuk leaving. Huberdeau was supposed to be the guy filling in for these 2 players, but really in this Daryl Sutter old school offense and really defensive-minded team, he wasn't built for success. But this year, I think he can get back on track. Expectations really aren't that high for the Calgary Flames. A new coach coming. I think this is exactly what Jonathan Huberdeau needs to really get back to maybe a point per game season like we've seen pretty much every other season he's played in the NHL. So the new coach, Ryan Sura, been an assistant for Calgary for about 5 years, and then he has a bunch of experience in the AHL and WHL as well. So I think this is going to be a really good change for Jonathan Huberdeau in that sense. And one of the biggest changes we saw in Huberdeau last season, and I think this is mainly Daryl Sutter just being kind of a dickhead and stuck in his own ways. He went from a 78% starting in the offensive zone compared to 61% with Calgary last year. 78% with Florida, down to 61% in his last season with Calgary. So if you have less offensive chances, you have less chances to produce, you have less opportunities to shoot. So I think that's one of the biggest reasons why we saw a 55-point season from Jonathan Huberdeau when we saw a 100-plus point season just a season ago. He also posted his lowest shooting percentage since 2016-2017 season at about 12%, and he had about 100 shots less. So I think that's also, you can attribute that to his percentage or his less percentage starting in the offensive zone this year, which obviously is a little bit frustrating for Jonathan Huberdeau as well. But if you can get Huberdeau in the 6th or 7th round in your upcoming fantasy hockey drafts, I think that's an absolute steal if he gets back to his point per game season like we've seen in years past. So definitely look for Huberdeau in that 6th or 7th round because I think that's extremely good value. Expect way better things from Huberdeau this season. All right, the next guy we're going to be looking at, a defenseman, Matt Dumba, who's now in the Arizona Coyotes. He had a really tough year last year. He's also in a prove-it year as well. He signed a 1-year, $4 million deal with the Arizona Coyotes. On a young Arizona team, people I think are maybe underestimating just a little bit. Like everyone thinks they're going to just be a complete bottom feeder. I don't think that's necessarily the case. We saw some pretty solid hockey from this group at the end of last season. So I think Dumba on that first D pair with either JJ Moser or Huso Valimaki can really produce in bangers leagues this season. People think he's old, but he's actually still on the right side of 30, just 29. He's coming off his worst season since his rookie year, totaling just 14 points. And I think, frankly, he just needed to change the scenery. I don't think the fans were in love with Matt Dumba in Minnesota anymore, and I think that maybe hurt his production a little bit. His shooting percentage last year was 4. That's incredibly low. We've never really seen it that low except for one season in 2019-2020 where he still totaled more goals and points than we saw last year. He's always been a 25 to 30 point season guy. He had one season, I think, where he had 50 points. So don't expect too much more from him in that department. But, when he's playing on this Arizona team on the first D pair, last year we saw him total about 20 minutes per game. He's going to get up to 23, 24 minutes. Some games he'll be up to 25, 26 minutes per game on the ice, leading this inexperienced younger defensive core. I think this is a great area for Matt Dumba to succeed, and someone that you can get pretty much at the end of your draft or pick up as a free agent, really, to kind of just see how he plays in this Arizona defense offensive scheme. All right, so the one goalie I have on this list is Thatcher Demko on the Vancouver Canucks. The beginning of last season for this team as a whole was just a disaster, and Demko certainly didn't help, but he didn't have any help, really. If you look at the stats from October to the end of December, this team was bottom 10 in expected goals against, so Demko was getting hung out to dry, especially high danger chances as well. But you look at the second half of the season, from about March to May, they were top 10 in expected goals against, so a much better defensive structure. They had that coaching change, and then I'm sure it was obviously just a point of emphasis, considering Demko was also hurt for a good part of the year. It's Spencer Martin in there, who is just atrocious, and I think Thatcher Demko, his skill level is way above the other goalies they have in this system right now. And during that time span as well, his final stats read last year: 14 wins, 14 losses, save percentage just over 900 at 901, and then his goals against average was 316. Second half of the season, though, from that time period where Vancouver really shored up defensively, obviously really helped him. His save percentage north of 915 and had a goals against average just over 2.5. So put a capable D-core in front of Demko and it'll help him a lot. We've seen him succeed in years past, and now the Canucks brought in Carson Soucy in the offseason, Ian Cole, and then they get a full season of Philip Hronek, who they essentially used the Horvat draft picks on to acquire. And Demko, just one season ago, he had 61 starts, 33 wins, 915 save percentage, and a 2.7 goals against average. And then 2 seasons before that, he was top 10 in goals saved above expected. So Demko is not a bad goaltender by any stretch. I think he just in a really bad scenario last season with how shit this D-core was at the beginning of the season. But I think you can expect a lot more from Demko this year, and someone I think that you can pick up later on as your second goalie and really produce as maybe even a top 10, top 15 fantasy hockey goalie this season. All right, so the last bounce back candidate we're going to be looking at, Ryan Johansen, who's now in the Colorado Avalanche, going to be acting as the second line center for this team. It's hard not to think a guy going from this Nashville team that's generally their top scorer has been about 80 points. I get, other than that, obviously that Roman Josi season 2 seasons ago, but usually it was Philip Forsberg or Johansen leading this team at about 80 points. They had a very balanced roster attack, and then you go to this Colorado Avalanche, obviously very top heavy, but playing in that top 6, I think he'll be a huge beneficiary of that. Just 28 points last year after a 63 point season the year before with 26 goals. I can easily see him getting back to 60 points this season on this Colorado team. This will be his 15th year in the NHL, so he's getting up in there in age, but still 31. I think he still has a lot left to offer, and he's been able to bounce back nicely after bad seasons, because like I said, 15 years in the NHL, he's obviously had some ups and downs. You look at his 20 to 21 season, he had just 22 points in 48 games, and then the season after that, as I mentioned, 63 points and 26 goals. And then you look at his first season in Nashville, he had just 34 points, then he had a bounce back season with just over 60 points. His shooting percentage was still pretty high last year, about 14%, but his shots were way down. He had 86 when we've seen this guy generally be over 100 shots. So as the second line center on this team, you get back up to 110, 130 shots, that'll get him right anywhere in the 20 goal range. I think on this team, acting on the second power play as well, I'm sure he'll get some first power play time as well if there are any injuries too. And you look at the second line center on this Colorado team the last 2 seasons. Last year it was JT Compher, who had about 50 points. There's some guys, there's definitely a lot of changeability there, but you look at 2 seasons ago, Nazem Kadri had 87 points. Now, is Ryan Johansen Nazem Kadri? No. I think he has a lot of skill left to offer, and I could definitely see him getting 50 to 60 points again, and who knows, maybe he can surprise us and even get somewhere in the 70 point season with how many goals are being scored in the NHL this year. But there's no reason to think why Ryan Johansen can't be a bounce back candidate for fantasy hockey in this spot with Colorado. All right, thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know who you guys think is going to be bouncing back this season in fantasy hockey, and I'll see you next time.